the technical backup, Raina Bilgin, who is responsible for the social media at the IAF. For those of you who do not know the IAF, let me just give you a little bit of information. We are present in more than 65 countries today. It was founded in 1994. And we take care of establishing industry standards, providing accreditation, supporting a community of practice, and we advocate and educate on the power of facilitation in the world today. So you can, for those who do not know it, you can check out the iaf-world.org site for more information today. And just some technical details, we will be using Menti.com. I will give you the code later on today to take questions because there are many people involved today. We have 75 inscriptions, so we will be taking questions via Menti. If you don't mind, we will be taking a photograph at the end. We will indicate to you when we will be taking that photograph. So if you do not want to be in the photo, you just simply have to cut your screens and we won't see you. So there we go. I am very, very happy to welcome here today Salwa Dalallah and Martin Farrell. Salwa led the United Nations Climate Secretariat's organizing team for many global climate conferences. And Martin is a certified professional facilitator and is also a coach and founder and director of Get to the Point. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, hello, good evening, everybody. Good morning, good whatever it is for you. It's a delight and a pleasure to be with you. I'm here in London. It's just getting dark now. And what we will be hearing about in this session is essentially a very simple process that has been around for generations. This process has been around for generations and it stood the test of time, and it found its way into one of the most significant meetings on the planet. So this simple thing then became very, very important. And Salwa, thank you so much for agreeing to share with us how that happened and then what happens in those Indaba meetings. Briefly to say, Salwa, you and I first met in 2006. And when we first met, then when you engaged me to run one of your team retreats, I could never have imagined that I would be sitting here today having this conversation. So it's a real thrill for me. We've been professional colleagues and now we've becoming friends, which I appreciate and enjoy very much. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. So if you say a few words, Salwa, and then I'll just run us through the process and we'll do a little bit of a check-in as well.
All right.
And we'll start our conversation.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Good evening, all. Good to be here today. My name is Salwa Dalallah. I've just finished like 30 years of service at the UN Climate Change Secretariat and the Atomic Energy Agency. More contradiction cannot be. I come from Sudan. I belong to the Sudanese Diplomatic Service. Martin and I, as he said, go back many years, 2006, where he facilitated retreats for my team until 2011. And then the most significant were that he did team building exercises for me for our Doha Climate Change Conference and then the Paris Climate Change Conference. We'll come to those a little bit later. It's always a pleasure to work with Martin. I'm glad to be here today. I'll let you then introduce the program and then we can go into the details. Indaba is something that I kind of learned to appreciate through you, Martin, more than anything else.
Really?
And it will be nice to talk about it today. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful, wonderful. So yes, the process we'll go through today is really quite simple. We'll just do a little check-in in a moment. I'll be asking just to see who on this gathering has experience of the UN climate change processes, and also who has heard of Indaba before registering for this session. So I'll just be asking those questions in a moment. So we'll be doing that, and then Salwa and I will be in conversation. Through that conversation, you will learn about what Indaba is all about. Partway through that conversation, David will give the Menti address so that you can start putting in questions. We'll then have a breakout for you to digest what you've heard, also meet other people on the call. The excitement of that is you don't know quite who you're going to meet, could be anybody from anywhere. So be curious and be happy with whoever you meet. And also during that time, we will then sift and sort those questions, which we will deal with predominantly in our second conversation. And of course, there will then be more chance for more questions if you want, but we'll sift those and then deal with them in the second conversation. And then we'll have another short breakout rooms. Each of these are for 7 or 8 minutes, just to think about what are the take-home messages for you? What are your nuggets of gold that you want to take with you? What have you learned from this? Now, I know there are some people on this call who are facilitators. It's run by IAF, the International Association of Facilitators. There are many people on this call who are not facilitators. We are all equal, and we have equal interest in spite of our different professional backgrounds. So if you're not a facilitator, you are most warmly welcome into this IAF community. And some of us know each other quite well in this community, but you are warmly welcomed. And of course, although you may not be facilitators, you are participants. So you have the wisdom of participants. So maybe you can be sharing that in those small groups if you want to go to them. So after the second one, we'll then come back and have some harvesting, by which I mean we'll just tell each other what we've been talking about and share what's been happening. And then we will say our farewells. We have 1.5 hours altogether through until past the next hour, wherever you are. So we now have 1 hour and 20 minutes, and we will not go over that time. We may finish a few minutes early, and we really do hope you can stay that whole time, and we really do hope that you will give this conversation your full attention if you possibly can. So there we are. Let's think, if I could just ask, just for a few moments, we'll just do a check-in. I'm going to ask you to either turn your camera off or do what I'm doing now, which is just to put your hand over the camera if you know where your camera is. So if everybody could do that, let me put this onto gallery view. So either turn off or, yeah, or just, yeah. And then if you have been involved in some way with the UN climate change negotiations in any way at any time, please just take your hand away and let's see you, or turn your camera back on. It'll just give us a bit of a sense of who's in the room and then who's here. So what I see from what I'm looking at is that the majority of you have not had experience of UN. That's wonderful. So this is an open field, Salwa, for us to share, well, you particularly, to share your wisdom. That's wonderful. Please close your camera again, if it's, and then had you heard of Indaba before you signed up for this? If you had, please turn your camera back on or show yourself. So who had heard of it before coming here? Oh, this is very good. So this is, Salwa, this is open territory, I think, because the majority of people don't have experience of climate change processes, UN climate change processes, or the Indaba. So that's wonderful. Those who do, please do feel free to make comments as well as ask further questions or observations, because you come to this as a little bit of an expert. So please work with us to help all of us go away at the end of this session, knowing about Indaba, knowing about how it might apply in your own work or life situation, what principles you might take out of this. So that's what we're about. So when we finish in 1 hour and 20 minutes from now, that we will know about it and we will be able to use it in some way. So please now turn your cameras back on if that's what you choose to do, so that we can all see each other and be a community of, emerging community of practice. And it's wonderful to see a number of names of people who I know both from the facilitation community and also from climate change times. Salwa, let's start with painting a bit of a picture. We'll come to Indaba in a moment, but just tell us what one of these conferences is like. I know they are of tens of thousands of people. What is it like if we were now to walk into one of those? What would we experience? What would we see? What would we hear? What would we touch? What would we feel? What's it like? Paint the picture for us before we go into Indaba.
Okay, before I do that, I'd just like to spend a moment saying that when I talk about the climate change conference, it's my time there from starting with Kyoto and ending in Paris. So we need to put it that. And Kyoto and Paris are both like household names in the climate change movement or session or process, because Kyoto was the first time when carbon dioxide or emitting carbon dioxide in the environment became illegal. And at the same time when carbon dioxide, hot air for some, became a commodity that we could buy and sell. And then Paris, many years ago, so Kyoto was in 1997 and Paris was in 2015. And that was the first time where there was a universal agreement agreed by 192 countries to find ways to combat climate change. So this is just like very significant period where I would like to just qualify. So
Yeah.
now to answer your question.
What's it like?
Yes,
Yeah,
a
what's
climate
it
change
like?
conference is the annual gathering of who's who in the environmental issues. A minimum of 10,000 persons from 192 countries. I'm saying minimum because it can be 30,000 people. Move from the meeting move every year from one continent to another for 2 weeks. So you imagine men in black suits, women in office gears, Western and other groups, indigenous persons in full attire, youth, women, activists, and joined by ministers in the course of the second week, and by at least 20 and up to 150 presidents for 3 days. And at least plus about 3,000 members of the press from every conceivable news agency. So this is the crowd.
Did you really say 3,000, Salwa? 3,000 people from the press?
Yes,
Wow.
there are 3,000 members of the press and every agency. So you name it, whether it's Al Jazeera, whether it's BBC, whether it's Japan News, everybody is there and reporting for 2 weeks. So like you are, very chaotic scene, I would say. But then who's who is defined by the color of their badge. If you have no name on your badge, it means you're a minister. If you are, no matter where presidents wear pins, and then there are other, the press wear green badges. So there's a way to kind of subtly distinguish who's who. No matter where the conference is held, it's inevitable that somebody has traveled 10 to 24 hours to be there. So as organizer, you have to cater for kosher, halal, vegetarians, ensure that there is a meditation room, a prayer room, a mosque, a bank that can change all currency. And jet lag means that there are power naps just all over the place. Two meetings we held were in Durban and in Paris, and my counterparts there both said this was more challenging than the World Cup, which they hosted. It was more challenging for them to host a climate change conference.
In South Africa.
In South Africa
they did both.
and in Paris. In spite of the 40,000 people, they said it was more challenging than the World Cup. So that's just to,
Just to create the frame a bit. And so let's remember, everybody, that Salwa is the person who was responsible for organizing all that. And Salwa, you said it was chaos, but actually it wasn't chaos. There was a lot happening, but if it was chaos, they would fall apart. So your job was to turn that potential chaos into something that could work. And you had your team, the Conference Affairs Services team, which was working with you to do that. And indeed, lots of other meetings throughout the year. So full respect for you, for somehow not going completely crazy in the light of all that. How many people were there in Paris? And then we'll come to Durban and the Indaba conversation. How many people in Paris?
Paris was 40,000.
40,000.
Person, but maybe we don't create a room where 40,000 people come in. So that's where the power of the United Nations come in to organize the conference. The first thing we start with is language, because it's like a Tower of Babylon. Every language is spoken. But the UN recognizes 6 languages, and the meeting is run in those 6 languages. The other thing is that the meeting starts in plenary, where every country is given 4 seats. and every non-governmental organization an area for the press, and every intergovernmental organization is given 2 seats. So we leave it to them to play then the musical chairs and decide who in which delegation. So there is a kind of self-discipline there of how, that's how you manage that. There's no space that can accommodate 40,000 people. And then the meeting is interpreted in 6 languages. I would say Japanese, Italian, and German are not among those languages because which languages became UN languages was decided after the Second World War. So you understand why that wasn't the case. And then the venue where the meeting is held is considered UN territory. So the rules of the UN apply there. Whether you're in France or you're South Africa or you're in Mexico, it's the rules of the UN apply. And it's streamed on and broadcasted on the internet. It's broadcasted on like public viewing. So those who cannot enter the room will still be able to know what's going on. That's how the chaos is managed.
Wow. And in that context, people have to try to have sensible conversations about an issue which is probably the most technically complex that faces us, and indeed the most politically complex in that scene of what you've called chaos. But in my observation, just the one that I went to, it was not chaos. It was, there was a kind of an order to it. And your job was to help that chaos not be chaotic and for people to come to decisions. And in some of the conferences, the COP, Conference of the Parties, the signatories to the protocols, there were decisions taken at that annual meeting, in some not. Let's focus our attention now then on Durban. Let's go back nearly 10 years. We're in Durban. It's the 2011 COP in November or December. We're introducing Indaba. Where did Indaba come from? Tell us the story of what happened, because it was not part of the negotiations or the process at all until then, was it? What happened?
Exactly.
Salwa?
So basically, you're right. You can't talk about Indaba without understanding the climate change process. That's why we had all this introduction. And now we come to the Indaba. So before 2011, the meetings were conducted in your normal, traditional Western standard of holding negotiations. So the powerful get into a room, agree on how things should be run, and then come out and impose that on everybody else. The climate change negotiation is very complex and very long and very tedious. And because it's a UN process, every country have a say, no matter how small or how big. So the US and the Seychelles have equal power in the climate change process. And that's where consensus and being heard is very important. So in the meeting before Durban, we had a total breakdown where the powerful decided to get together and come to an agreement and impose it on everybody, and it wasn't agreed. Small states said, no, we don't accept that. We're not gonna give you consensus. And so the whole thing broke down. So by the time we arrived in Durban, there was a lot of mistrust. People were negotiating in a very, I don't believe what you're saying. We don't know what were you planning, what's your agenda, etc. And so South Africa was holding the presidency of the conference at that time. What they were negotiating is that every group in that has its own interest. So it's 192 countries. Some of them are petrol producers, some are coal miners, some want to have technology, others are suffering from the effect of climate change, others are dealing with it as we speak, and others believe that climate change is a hoax. So these are the conflicting views that the president needs to bring together so that we can have an agreement. And then there's the blame game. You know, you did it. Why are we paying for it? It's your fault. It's the Western, it's the industrialized countries. Why are we, which are not industrialized, paying for this? So what happened is that as this was going on, the South Africans wanted an agreement, and so the president of South Africa of the South African team, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, sent her main lead negotiator, which was Ambassador De Seko, and she came to me and she said, Mrs. Dalallah, we're looking for a small room where a group of countries can come together and just deal with the difficult issues. Can you just help us there? So Ambassador De Seko and I started speaking, and I think that's literally the moment when Indaba was born. It's like we took it to the African context. All of a sudden she told me, you know, it's like what we have when the elders get together and there is a real issue and they sit and they discuss it and they find solution on behalf of the tribe. And it's called Indaba in South Africa. So as a Sudanese, it resonated with me as well, because in my own country, we have something like that. When there is a conflict, when tribes are fighting, there is something called Judea, which we hold. And so we said, okay, I think I know what you're looking for. And here I go back to my team and I say, okay, give me half an hour and I'll come back to you with some options. So that's what happened. That was like really the first moment.
And so then at that first moment, and born out really of that crisis, the Indaba, the simple process of sort of gathering together was born.
So I guess so. I went back to my team. I always go back to my team when, you know, the team that you so ably helped me put together. So I go back to my team and we huddle. We just sit there and we're like, okay, we have a mission, and our mission is always to save the world. That has always been our mission.
Start with that and then move on from there.
Yeah,
is that
so
it?
it's our mission. Yeah. So we sit together and we are brainstorming in really under very high time pressure. And it's like James Bond, you have 5 minutes, you know, that sort of background. So we sit there and we just with a piece of paper and pen and, okay, what do we do? What do we offer? What do we have? And I think I went back then to Ambassador De Seko and said, okay, this is our concept. We can give you, we can accommodate 300 persons. It was the first one was 300 persons in the room, round table, and let us know what you want us, how you want us to do this.
Very good, thank you. We're partway through our first conversation here. In a moment, we're going to look at the practicalities, and I'll show you a picture of an actual Indaba so that you really, that picture will speak 1,000 words, I think. So I'll put that on the screen in just a moment. It may be that you're already coming up with questions. So if I could ask David, if you would be so kind as to speak and tell us the, and put the chat, the Menti thing in the chat, so people can then ask those questions. David, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I'm just typing in the simple menti.com website right now, and I'm going to put the code in the chat now.
Very good. So just put in whatever questions you want. It's our job, and specifically David's job, to sort out the ones that are overlapping or the same. So we want to answer all of your questions. So do that anytime from now on.
Okay, Martin, can I just?
Yes, you can just, absolutely.
Are you going to show that picture of the room now or later?
I thought I would show it now. I think I'm,
okay.
I mean, now you're seeing my session there. You're seeing all sorts of, I don't know how I can, oh, there, you see, I prepare all this. Oh, there we are.
All right. So
there is just 2 pictures. This is the spirit, in a way, of the Indaba. Do you want to talk us through that?
This is what Ambassador De Seko and I were talking about. That's how we, as Africans, imagine Indaba to be. And then take us to the other Indaba, Martin.
I will. The other Indaba. This is Paris, is that right? This was in Paris.
I believe so. Yes, this was Paris. Yes.
So there's quite some difference there between that, which looks fantastic. I would love to be there. You know, people are talking and so on, and this one. This is where the work happens, and I think this leads us to our next area of conversation, which is just the practicalities. How on earth do you organize this? You know, the size of the room, the shape of the room, who can get in, who can't get in? What about the press? What about, you know, all those practical things? Because as we know, as facilitators and participants, you need to get your frame, you know, you need to keep your get your container sorted out before you can even begin to have any decent conversations. Talk us through practicalities.
Right. Yeah, as facilitators, we all know the most important part of our workshop or facilitation team is the setup and the place. So the Indaba has to be a room accessible, but away from the eyes of the press. A round table but it's really an oval table because the chair sits at the top. At the desk, there should be only decision makers. There's no time to go out and say, oh, I'm going to ask my boss what he thinks of this proposal. No, you need to be a decision maker to sit on that. That's synonymous with the African Indaba. It's the elders that sit there. So if you don't have the ability to decide, you're not part of that group. Then so no more than 2 persons from any country can be in the room at the same time, but every country and every group is present. And then it's fundamentally a leadership group. There's no press, no civil society, and no non-decision makers. So like, and no non-governmental organizations. I guess the Indaba at the climate change conference is the only time where I would say that our elected officials earn their salaries. They have to go in that room and make decisions and work for it. So you find ministers sitting there, you find ambassadors sitting there, you find high officials sitting there. And it's chaired by the president of the conference or somebody that he designates, because he doesn't sit there himself. He designates his lead negotiator, who's always very well versed on the subject, to sit with that person. And it's very intense. Like, it's equals in the room who know that their bosses are out there expecting them to come out with a decision. And on a lighter note there, because of the limitation on who comes into the room, we in the Secretariat, myself and some members of my team, become like door bouncers, because there are very high officials trying to push themselves into the room. And you have to stop them, saying, no, 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 you cannot go there. We already have 2 people from Thailand or 2 people from the UK, etc.
What happens if someone in the room says, oh, my minister or my whatever, you know, he's just called me and he says he has to come into the room. You know, he's waiting at the door. Go and let him in.
Okay.
Did that happen?
I have one such funny incident where I had a minister actually come to me. I was at the door and said, no, it was the ambassador. And he said, my minister just called me. He's in the room and I need to go see him. So I'm like, okay, give me a moment. So I went there and I approached the minister and I said, I have Ambassador so-and-so who said that you just called for him. As there are already 2 of you here, can your other colleague leave so I can let him in? He said, no, 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 I did not send for him. So I went back.
Cheating.
I went back and I said, I understand that he no longer needs you. The issue has been resolved. So yeah, you get that sort of
so
people trying
we understand.
The other thing is that
you're a bouncer as well as a diplomat.
The other thing
diplomatic bouncer.
Yeah, we also get the press. I mean, we caught press trying to push microphones under the walls. And we then do the Indaba in a room that doesn't have windows so that nobody's trying to lip read. It's you know, very kind of, yeah. So
did that, maybe early on, you hadn't learned that. I mean, you've learned that by the time you got to Paris. But before, the press, and I'm thinking of 3,000 press, every single one, hungry, you know, for the scoop. And they probably would be lip reading or probably trying to look at body gestures.
I don't think anybody did, though. I don't think anybody did. I mean, Daniel and Michael are in the audience. I think they can vouch to that.
They might put some. Okay, if there's anybody in this conversation who has particular comments, or you know, you have been part of this, then by all means put those in the chat, and we can look at those, share those with everybody of your own experience, and we will have a chance at the end to, you know, voice some of those comments as well. But please put them in the chat if you've got your own experience of these things. So I'll just stop the share a moment because we've got that picture in mind. So the room is set up. Let me just check one thing. Is it only the president of the conference who can call an Indaba? I can't turn up and say, I want an Indaba. No, only the president. Only the president. And then the president, who in Paris was
Minister Fabius.
Fabius, I was going to call him Fabier, but then Fabius, Minister Fabius. He said, right, we will call it Indaba. And then he passes to his lead negotiator to actually facilitate that conversation. Let's think a little bit about that. during this first conversation. So how, the door's locked, everybody's in, there's 190 times 2, is that right? There's about nearly 400 people, something like that. You've probably got, you're there, you've got some of your team there as well, I guess. So there's something like 400 people. How on, I think if I was facilitating that, well, I couldn't facilitate that, A, because I would never be asked, and B, because I don't have I don't understand enough about climate change. And you said a moment ago that the lead negotiator is someone who understands the subject. This is interesting for us as facilitators, because typically we would be in a room where we probably we know very little about the subject matter. And indeed, it's not our affair. If we do know about it, we lay that on one side and we allow the group to find their own wisdom. But in this situation, you said she has that knowledge. And I understand from what you said that that was an essential part of her ability to be able to facilitate in the room. Is that right? So what would she do? What would she do? She'd say, okay, we're all here. What do we do? How does she start? What's the process?
It's launched by the president. So the only time the president comes into the room is when the Indaba opens. He sets out the agenda. And the agenda is always which are the issues which he expects this group to resolve. They are normally very complex, substantive issues relating to transfer of technology, relating to mitigation methods for climate change, relating to finance, how much money, who should be put on the table to get things moving. And then he hands over to his lead negotiator. Yes, unlike a regular facilitator, this lead negotiator needs to know the ins and outs of the topics, needs to know the other people in the room, and needs to kind of always know what their preconceived positions are. So the idea is to move them away from that. But at the same time, she's an equal to all of them. So she has to accord every one of them the right to speak, the right to be heard. And the other thing about the Indaba is that decisions that are made in there needs to be honored. You can't just walk out of the room and then say, oh, I changed my mind. So it's very much a trust group, because the president is the one who says, okay, I've launched this, you sit together, you make agreements. My colleague here who's chairing this on my behalf will capture this agreement and bring it to me. And then we start what we call the waiting game. The president waits in his room in case he's called. I wait so that he hands me the document, and my team is waiting so that they can translate, edit, print, and publish the document.
And during that waiting time, which I know is often in the middle of the night, I think you'll refer to that in just a moment. In that waiting time, what is the process? Do people put their hand up and speak? Does she go around alphabetically? Is each voice equal? How does she manage that with that many people?
Okay, the international process has like groups. So you hear of the group of G77 in China. That's mostly the developing countries in China. And the EU comes in as a group. There are sometimes the Eastern Europeans can be one group, but these groups are not very rigid. They're very, depending on the issue. Sometimes Africa and the EU are on the same page, whereas China is on a different page, or Latin America and Africa are on the same page and others. And so the idea is you go on a topic by topic and try to reach a resolution. I mean, the worst case scenario is you go back to the president and say, we could not agree on this issue. Okay. But generally, there would be movement in the room. And so there are two ways to speak, either as an individual country or as part of a group, if there are common positions. The Secretariat then is in the room, they capture those, and words are very important. I mean, we've spent nights just dealing with an is and an are, and whether it's an e or those, it seems trivial, but they're very important, and we take them seriously. And that's why the role of the editors and the translators and the interpreters is and the facilitator, she needs to really capture and understand what they have said and what they have agreed on.
Yeah. So we're going to go into our groups in just a moment, but before we do, let's just capture the story of what actually happened in Paris. I don't know about others on this conversation, but I was sitting with my wife on the Saturday afternoon anyway, watching the stage as it all unfolded and having a little bit of an idea of what had been going on behind the scenes. I learned more from these conversations, but just tell us about that capturing. You're waiting, the president's waiting, your team is waiting. I think it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Is that right?
Yeah, I think
what happens that? And then we'll go into groups. Just tell us that story, the real story of Paris.
In Paris, we were a little bit more sophisticated. So we had a group of secretariat staff in an adjacent room capturing the agreements or what the wording on time. So once that is done, then a document comes out. But these documents needs to be translated into 6 languages, edited, and we can't say safety in one language and energy in another language, or security and say, there are words that could be, depending on whether it's Spanish, French, or English, it's very easy to change it. And also the people in the room are normally not linguists. So they agree on a language that could be, and we need to, when we translate, we need to keep the language without changing the meaning. So if we do any editing, that's, so I remember in Paris, Minister Fabius called me, I was waiting in my office. And so he calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, Mrs. Dalallah, he hands me the paper. And it's very important that the paper doesn't go many places because it shouldn't leak. It should go to the plenary before it leaks anywhere, because then it becomes unacceptable. And some countries will get angry that the press shouldn't see it before every country has agreed to it. And so he handed me the document and say, Mrs. Dalallah, I plan to convene plenary in an hour, which meant that he wants this back in 6 languages and posted on the web, etc.
You mean the formal plenary to confirm the agreement?
To confirm the agreement. Yeah, so he 1 hour,
okay.
Yeah, so I had already spoken to my team and they said, Salwa, once the agreement is done, we would need 3 hours to translate, edit, clean it up and give it. So please buy us that time. So I said, yeah, okay. So that was before I met the president or Minister Fabius. And so I told him, okay, why don't you, I think I appealed to his Frenchness. I said, why don't you go to a hotel with the other ministers and just take a shower and a change of shirt and just give me time to do this properly. Give me 2 hours. So he kind of looked at me and said, okay, yeah. I think the idea of a shower appealed to him. So after the long night of waiting.
You're a persuader as well as a bouncer and a diplomat.
Said 2 hours. And I went back to my team and said, okay, we have 2.5 hours to do this. So I was like there, I believe, you have to be a believer if you're a conference organizer, that somehow faith and that candle you have behind you could come to the rescue. We did do it. It did take, my team came back in 2 hours actually and gave us the document, and we managed to put it up and set it, and plenary was convened in 2.5 hours.
So let's just hold in our minds that initial traditional way of meeting, as it were, around the campfire, then with this very formal and high pressure process. And it's at that moment at 3 in the morning that those two clash in a way, because you then have to turn that into precise wordings. Could is different from should, and a comma is different from a full stop. So your team then had to pull all that together. Before we go into our groups, and Raina, I know that your finger is sitting there on the button to put us into groups of 4, I think. There is an element of this that you've touched on but not referred to specifically, which is gender. Tell us about the gender aspect of this.
Okay,
this is all women doing this, wasn't it? Who sort of invented Indaba. Tell us about that.
Which is kind of unusual because, as we know, I mean, you saw from that photo you showed us, it's mostly men in black suits. And even in the UN, when you enter a meeting room, it's basically, can you still hear me?
Yes, we hear. Yes, we just had
someone
who wasn't on mute.
Yeah, so basically,
continue.
you have, I think I lost my train of thought there. But
you were talking about men in suits.
It's mostly men in suits. But all of a sudden, I think unintentionally, the process seemed to have been hijacked by women, because it was in In Mexico, which was the year before Durban, the president of the conference was a woman. It was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, Patricia Espinosa, who's currently the executive secretary of the climate change. And then after her came the Minister of Foreign Affairs of South Africa, who was also a woman. And yes, and then Ambassador Di Secco was also female. So am I. And it so happened that we were the ones who did bring the Indaba, talked about it. Of course, in our colleagues, the secretary of the policymaking organs was a man, Richard Kinley at the time. There were others, but I think at the time the decision was made and the way this was taken forward, it was mostly females from developing countries who actually.
That is very well worth noting, isn't it? Very well worth noting.
It did become that, and I'm not shy about voicing that's when maybe we just found a little loop that we took, and it wasn't a chance. It was just thinking out of the box, I think.
Yeah, and the fifth woman was the chair, the facilitator of the Indaba in Paris. So there were five women. Let's just hold that in mind. It's a quarter to the hour. We're going to have at least this one group. We'll see if we have time for the second. So the task here is quite a simple one. Really is just introduce yourselves to each other, say hello and whatever, and digest what is it that really stood out for you? Is there something that really struck you, surprised you, or indeed relates to your own current practice, the thing that inspired you? During that time, we'll be harvesting some questions, and when we come back, we'll do our best to address those questions. So have fun in your groups. I think we've said 5 or 10 minutes, probably be around 7 minutes. Of course, we'll send a message out partway through. And I would encourage you, whether you're facilitators or not, please join those groups. If you really don't want to, just don't join the group. But if you would like to, you'll meet some new friends from somewhere in the world, and just be curious and just join the groups and see what conversations you can have. We'll see you back in 7 minutes or so. Thank you, Raina. And yeah, I'm not going to join a group because I've been invited to join one. So we'll stay here.
The recording is on pause. Okay, Raina, are you bringing people back in?
Yep, and the recording is back on.
They're coming. Everybody's coming back in. Welcome back from your travels. We hope that you had some interesting conversations, albeit quite small ones, brief ones and short ones, and probably slightly frustrating ones, but we hope that you gathered some gems from those conversations. We have 7 questions. Oh, there's someone there.
Paolo.
The first 3 or 4 of those really continue and dig deeper into the conversation that we've just had. Meanwhile, please do carry on asking questions. David, should people be carrying on putting those in the chat or in Mentimeter?
Yes, they can. We have no more new questions since before the breakout room, so I'll keep an eye on them if you want.
Yep, please do. So if you've got more questions, put them in there. I'll tell you what the questions are. One about the process, one about the nature of the decisions that were approved, one about the facilitator, the lead negotiator, staying neutral, one about gender, the part gender plays in the discussions, one about how do you hold people's attention, one about virtual Indaba, which I think is probably a new one to Salwa, and then lastly, Salwa, your best moment in your time in climate change.
Okay. Sure.
And I'm putting the link in again for the questions, which Bogdan gave us, which is great. Thank you, Bogdan.
Yeah. So let's see how we go with those questions, and then we'll decide whether we want another breakout.
Okay, maybe I'll start with answering the question about the process. I mean,
the process. Dig a little deeper into that, if you would.
So basically, and I hope I understood the question and will answer it correctly. So the agenda of the Indaba is always the contentious issues, where discussion, compromise, and decisions are required. In every conference, these issues are slightly different. What is also required are that the promises that a party will make in the Indaba, they will not go out and renege on. This is basically the main. So which are these issues? We have lots of discussion in the main plenary room, where all the and the agendas of the climate change are how to mitigate the effect of climate change, how to adapt to climate change, how to make countries reduce, like have policies to discuss how to reduce their carbon dioxide emissions, how rich countries or more industrialized countries will transfer technology to poorer countries and developing countries so that they start working with clean technology, because that's part of how you combat climate change. And then a big question in the process is always how much money is put in the process. There was the famous Green Development Fund. And so these issues, when it comes to transfer of technology, for example, the EU and Western Europe are always very conscious of the fact that they don't want to transfer technology to all developing countries, because these developing countries include China. So you understand the sensitivities there.
So in that sensitivity, these are terribly complex politically, technically. What is the process?
And so
the lead negotiator, what does she do? The door is closed.
So the lead negotiator,
what does she do? How does she start?
She's supposed to, so they have the agendas. They have, I recall one Indaba where the main question was transfer of technology, particularly to African countries.
So that was the subject that the president had said, sort out
that was one of the
technology.
subjects. The other Indaba, I can't remember which one, but it was the amount of funds that are put in the Green Development Fund. Those are two that I recall were like major subjects. And so it's like the haves and the have-nots, but the haves don't want to give, but the have-nots, but they need the have-nots to agree so that an agreement is reached at. The neutrality of the facilitator is because it's assumed that the president of the conference must be neutral. He does not have a position. His job is to bring everybody together.
And that's that role written in statute in a way.
That's written in stone, actually.
Stone.
And that is then passed on to his facilitator or his main negotiator. I mean, one of the reasons, in my view, that Copenhagen collapsed was that the president was not neutral. He was behaving more like the prime minister of a rich, developed country who felt that he could impose his views on the rest of the world.
Right.
And that collapses. So I guess I hope that is answers the question.
Well,
if not,
I'm going to push you a little further, because there were I think you touched on the three questions of the nature of the decisions, the process, and also the neutrality. So with the neutrality, I understand that it is her job to be neutral.
Yeah.
But she's been in the climate change negotiations for years, so she knows the story. She knows where the bodies are. But her job there is to be neutral. She has to be neutral. She puts her own knowledge on one side, and there are a number of us perhaps in this room now who have been in that position where you're a neutral facilitator. You know the stuff, you know what's going on, but you put it on one side, and people will watch you like a hawk if you start arguing for your own constituency.
Exactly.
The question then, I still don't have an answer to this, Salwa, and I'm going to push you on it if I may, which is about the process. You know, everybody is in the room. You've got your 190 times 2 plus a few others. Who is in the room? They're all around the table. And she says, now we start. Okay. What does she do? What does she do? What happens first?
It's simply giving the floor to Canada, to the EU, to the
Someone
head
puts their hand up. Canada
yeah.
puts their hand up.
Yeah, yes, because they're sitting around the table and they speak. But what the facilitator pushes for is that we know that the position of Canada is not to agree to, say, reduction of petrol production or something like that, or Saudi Arabia for that matter. They were the most vocal about what needs to be done. And so what the facilitator pushes for is a change of positions, a compromise.
I see.
What can we get? How can you, like, I remember very specifically in Paris, where the ministers were discussing how they are going to agree on shifting their positions. They came saying, okay, the only amount we're going to give for the green climate, the climate fund is so much, yeah, and or that transfer of technology to Africa is not going to happen. We can only transfer such technologies, but not others, yeah, and there needed to be a shift. So basically, what that's why you need the ministers around the table to tell you that, okay, we were going to give 100,000, but now it's going to be 150. Whoever is interested, I can send them all the details of what exactly was agreed on in Paris. But basically, you come out in that room, you are not allowed, and that's why the press is not required, because many of the governments like put a show when the press is there about you know, stating positions and etc. I mean, I remember, for example, in Kyoto, when Al Gore, who was at the time the vice president of the US, came to Kyoto, and his instruction was not to agree to a Kyoto protocol. But while he was there, he changed his mind, because all the other ministers got around and convinced him why a Kyoto protocol was important.
Wow.
So there are these moments, and there are lots of those. I for example, recall in Paris, the EU, including led by people like Merkel and Sarkozy, came to the meeting with a certain position, which then they had to go back into a closed room and change that, realizing that to get what they want, to get progress, as they call it, they need to move from those positions.
Wow. So I think it
is a live process.
Yes,
Unlike it's not like sending a letter and then waiting for a reply, getting it back, etc. You're on that room, you make the decision there.
So I'm going to, because we've got 7 questions, and these, I think you've been addressing the first 3. Let me say what my understanding is, and you tell me if I've got it right, which is that the host country, and in this case, the host negotiator, has to be neutral. And she's watched like a hawk and has to be a neutral facilitator, as any facilitators in this room would be, regardless of their background and knowledge. But for her, in order to be able to manage the conversation, she needs to have the respect of everybody there. They need to know that she's got some place in their environment. Secondly, the process is quite a simple one. She starts, people ask for the floor, they're given the floor, presumably they sort of line up in order as they ask for the floor, and then they keep discussing, and she keeps giving the floor to people until they come to some resolution. They just keep going around. So it may be that out of that 190, even allowing for the fact that there are some groupings, as you said before, about the EU and the G7 and Africa and so on, that there may be some people who haven't, or some signatories, some parties who have not spoken, but they come to a decision.
Yeah, like
is that how it works? They just keep going.
Exactly. Like, for example, one of the things that happened in Paris, the African group was not happy about the language that went into transfer of technology. They felt that they were left out. But what they had is a promise from the president saying he will keep this issue alive during other coming up conferences.
Okay.
And that was good enough for them to agree to that language.
Okay.
So stuff like that.
Wonderful. It's really helpful having that example, because that's the other, give us an idea of the decision that was taken. So the transfer of technology was one of them. Finance is one of them. And if anybody wants to know any more of the substance, then please put your email in the chat and say you want this specific information. And Salwa, you've kindly said that you could provide that. Let's move on to, you could, we will do the best we can. Let's think about gender. The question, I'm not sure if it was a whole question. I think it was just 2 words, gender dynamics. So the implication is, what were the gender dynamics, given the fact that this was a process which was essentially initiated and brought to life, if I can put it that way, by 5 women over 10 years in a room mainly of men.
I can give you the exact question is, how are gender dynamics managed in Indaba, since the majority of the participants are male?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, David. There you go. Salwa, what's the answer?
I mean, David, that's the classic boardroom scenario. How many women are in the boardroom?
How many were?
One.
Not many.
No. Generally, any boardroom.
Oh, in a boardroom.
They would have 1, 2, none. We have the funny, but I think what happens there, at least my experience with once you are in there, you are the representative of Sudan, Nigeria, the United Kingdom. It doesn't matter whether you are a man or a woman.
So does that answer the gender dynamics?
I don't think there is a gender, but there is, of course, in the process itself, there is like women, gender, women, and climate change. So there is a process that women are more affected by the effects of climate change than others, etc. But I think in the Indaba, in the negotiation process, you are just the representative of the country. I don't think there is a gender dynamic there. Yes, there are less women in the room, but that's universal. That's nothing specific.
So what we'll pick up these other couple of questions, and then I think rather than going to groups and so on, we'll proceed by having an open discussion. So I'll be asking if anybody wants to speak or make comments or observations. And it may be that the person who asked the question about the gender dynamics wants to make a comment about that or follow up on that. So please feel free to do that if you wish before we finish in 20 minutes.
I have two new questions if you want, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, let's just ask these ones first, and then we'll come to those. If I can ask, because we've got the one, how do you hold attention? How do I would imagine it's because people know they're changing the life on the planet and they're fueled with lots of coffee. Is that how you hold people's attention? What happens?
Okay.
Do people go to sleep? They've been working, they've been jet lagged, they've had 2 weeks of all this stuff. How can you hold people's attention?
This is my own, I'll answer this question with my own personal view. I think they are professional negotiators, because when you look at who was in the room, they're mostly diplomats, government officials, ministers, parliamentarians, presidents. And so it's their job. You know, that's what I said in the beginning. This is the time when the people we elect have to earn their salary. And they know how to negotiate. They know how to hold positions. They know, if you go back to YouTube and look at climate change negotiation processes, you will see these fantastic speeches that these men and women give. So I would say that my short answer is that they are professional negotiators.
Yeah, and that's what they do. They hold attention. They can survive on very little sleep, and they can still do their job.
Yeah, somebody sent a very interesting thing in the chat about facilitation and negotiation is not the same. Yes, you're right. The people in the room are the negotiators, but the leader of the group, the main facilitator, that's the role of the facilitator. Yes, so there are a group there. There are the negotiators, which are all the representatives of all the countries, but the person chairing the session, that is the synonymous to the facilitator, I would say. I think it was Rosanna who put that question out.
Thank you. What we're going to, there is one more question I'd like you to respond to, Salwa, and please be thinking then about whether you would like to make a comment. I'll just simply ask you to put your hand up. I've got 2 screens, but I'll jump between the 2. So just put your hand up electronically or the real hand, and then I'll call you. And it may be following up on some of these points. It may be a new thing. There are points in the chat as well, which I'm skimming through, but it may be that David could help with that. Or if you want to verbalize your comment in the chat, then please feel free to do so. And we'll do that through until we conclude in 20 minutes. Whilst you're thinking about that, Salwa, would this work in a virtual environment? Could you have a Zoom Indaba? Would that work? Can you imagine that that would work?
Okay, there is like, I have no experience with a virtual Indaba, because the Indabas were only held as physical Indabas so far. I'm not familiar of any that was held as a virtual Indaba. You all know that the climate change conference last year in 2020 was postponed to now. It's going to be in Glasgow in 2021. So there was no experience there about an Indaba. Whether it, you know, it needs to be, my feeling is that, sorry, I'm going back to my African. An Indaba is something that needs to be held around the fire or outside an igloo. It's such a traditional process, and it needs to, you need to look somebody in the eye, you need to feel what they're saying, you need to hear them. And that is what makes it so special. Yes, what we're trying to do, what we have managed to do, is move it into a multinational environment. That takes a little bit of the sex appeal from it.
Yeah.
And that's, so making it virtual is going to be even takes more. It's going to make it,
yeah. Sounds like that's a challenge that is lying ahead, perhaps. I see Sasha and Charlotte, you would like to make a point, and if anybody else would like to as well, put the electronic hand or just physically raise your hand. I shall try to keep an eye on everything.
Yeah,
Please.
It's me, I'm Sasha from Denmark, and I have worked with a council process that sprung out of the Native American tradition, and I've done that for the last 15 years. So I see a lot of resemblance in what you're saying, and I do very much agree that I prefer the fire and the circle around the fire to give that process and looking each other in the eyes and sensing what's in the circle. But I'm curious, because I'm used to working with my processes, and how do you get to the point where, because I sense that sometimes you get to a point where you're kind of almost exhausting the process, where everybody has said everything, and what are your tools to come to that point as a facilitator and start getting the groups towards decision? And do you have a specific decision process that you use? Whereas, for instance, you said, yes, they could agree if the president said, we will continue that in the next one. Okay, then we can agree to the language.
Okay.
I understand. So how do you land it after you've been round and round and round? How do you land it and get it?
Those two last steps.
Yes, very good question. I think, and that has been the challenge of the facilitator. I think there were, you know, sometimes threat is a good thing. Those people in the room is like, you tell them that they know the eyes of the world are on you. We've got every press agency in the world out there waiting for you to come out of this room. We've got thousands of people sitting at home or in the room or in Paris or in Copenhagen waiting for a decision. And I think so you appeal to their sense of, do we really want to leave this room with no agreement? And I think that's the point when you get them to come down from their high horses and say, what is your minimum requirement? It's like going to the market, you know, before you walk away, the seller will come to you and say, okay, you know, how instead of 35, give me 32 or something like that.
But in a way, what I'm hearing you saying is that you're also trying to evoke that sense of being actually the elders on a different level. So taking that aspect you started out with saying, this is a process for elders, but evoking that in them, and the press being the eyes of the tribe.
Because like, I remember a lot of climate change speeches where the guys say, how can I go home and look my kids in the eye? And they'll tell me, what have you been doing for 3 weeks in Copenhagen or in Paris or in Bangkok? You know, he's a minister, yes, but he's a minister, and he's going to come home and he's going to tell his family, we failed. And many people don't want to go back home and tell that to their children, because their children, if they're anything like mine, one of them is at least in the audience right now, they want to save. I mean, you know, they want to, I used to, one of the funny stories, personal one I have, is that I used to travel a lot. So my daughters were often home and they would go to school and I wouldn't be there for whatever is happening. And so my daughter will just proudly tell her, my mom is out there saving dolphins. So that explains why I'm not there, you know? And so, so that's basically, I think it's the threat, is the need, is your mission is to save the world. And that's the bottom line at the end of it. Yeah.
So that sounds, and I can understand that threat and that pressure, particularly in the example you gave about the last day or the last night of the Paris conference, which in itself had an enormous pressure upon it. And it seems that that was sufficient with the contributions to get to a point of decision. But Sasha, I don't know if that speaks to your substantial experience of using your own process. Maybe you can't recreate that pressure in your situations because you don't have 3,000 journalists outside your room.
But I have
come to Michael next.
Yeah, but I've learned that it actually matters that it matters, so to speak.
Exactly.
So when it matters, no matter if it's the whole world or if it matters to the tribe. So I've also taught that to numerous number of people over the planet. And I can see that if we have done a process that is only like a mock process, come up with something we need to discuss, it's actually harder to people to get to the place where they come to an agreement. Whereas it really matters.
Yeah.
And that's the 3,000 journalists or your kids, because I have kids too. So I mean, then the pressure is there. And that's when it kind of evokes the whole idea about that you make this on behalf of a tribe or behalf of a large group, because then you become the elders, and that's the sense also in our process that you need to evoke in the people. So I can easily follow that one. I have my own steps, but I'm happy. Thank you.
Yes, very nice.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And as you talk about the tribe, invoking the tribe, and I get a shiver. I've just got a shiver, because then it connects to something essential in us, doesn't it? There we are. It's all about the life and death of humanity on the planet, and these people are charged with that responsibility, and they take on that responsibility in those moments. So it's, wow, quite something. We have another 10 minutes or so. I'm also at the end, Salwa, just so you know, I'm going to close, not now, but in a moment, the most rewarding moment in all your time. That will be my closing question to you, so you can be thinking about that. So Michael, I'll come to you, and David, if you're keeping an eye on the chat, perhaps you could invite anybody in the chat to speak as well if they want after Michael. Michael, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, thank you. And what I wanted to mention is that the part of the mastery of a facilitator is also to spot things that are hopeless and will not be decided or agreed upon. Because if you don't spot them and throw them out early on, they can make the rest of the kind of salvageable part of the agreement collapse. Like unfortunately, it happened last year in Madrid, and that's kind of squarely the responsibility of the facilitator to say that, okay, guys, this is what we can still discuss. Let's forget about these things for now. So that was
your question then, what would the lead negotiator do if she or he thought that it was hopeless? And has that ever happened? Is that the question?
No, I think Mikhail was giving us an information there, which is really good, which I think he was complementing what I was saying, in that he's saying sometimes, and that is back to Sasha again, sometimes the facilitator fails. It's not like it's not always the facilitator succeeds in getting a compromise, in getting an agreement. And Mikhail actually did bring up that in Madrid last year, the facilitator actually failed for them to reach an agreement. So yeah, it's not always success. Yeah, so failure is part of the formula. Thank you for that, Mikhail. I think it's very pertinent. Yes.
I have a few questions if you want.
Please do. And as we're coming to our last 10 minutes, please be thinking and maybe making a note about what you will be taking away from this session. We were going to have a breakout group to think about that, but we won't do that. But just be thinking, what is the one thing that I'm going to do differently, or I've learned, or whatever, the thing that stands out for me? Give yourself that time, I would. Yeah, what are the points in the chat, David?
I have one comment here. Quick ideation and problem solving skills seemed quite relevant. How did you build these skills within your team? That's one question. And is there a handbook?
Aha, I know the answer to that, but I won't say what it is. But so the building the skills within the team, quick ideation, and being able to operate. How have you, tell us a little bit about the team that you had behind you organizing this, Salwa?
Okay, my personal team was the organizing team, yeah. And over the years we learned to anticipate what is coming our way, and part of doing team building. I mean, basically, it's our team who, over the years, my team was getting more and more practice about how to organize a climate change conference. Our major challenge was that as the meeting moves every year from one country to the next, and we deal with the local team, with the government team, it is their first conference ever. And so they need to come up to speed. And we decided that one of the things to do is have that team building exercise with the team from the host government to bring us together. The other group are the negotiators. And these are, Mikhail belongs to that. Daniel is on my side, but Mikhail is the people actually who know what the substance of climate change is, what's happening there. And I think those are skills you build. The Secretariat has the skills because you recruit the right people, you're part of this process. I came into it 20 years ago and I learned, Mikhail was already there, and I learned things like number crunching and transfers of technology and mitigation and etc. He knows that from university, from being the environmentalist, the environmental engineers, etc. So the Secretariat, that's why it's called the Secretariat, has the skills to lead the negotiations, to prepare the documents, to make the position papers, to tell you how to transfer technology to developing countries, to tell you how to mitigate the effects of climate change. There are similar groups in the countries, but everybody comes to it with their own background, and I think that's the challenge. Mikhail, do you want to compliment me there on what I just said?
Just wanted to say that I'm also on your side originally.
Thank you. Yes.
That's good to hear. I think we're all on the same side. Yeah,
I know my loyal.
Poetic, but it's true.
Yeah.
But what I've observed, Salwa, as well, is that your organizing team, in a way that they have had some, well, you select well, I think, and then they have some training and so on, but you select people who thrive in that kind of situation. And then if they survive one COP, if they survive one of these, then they're going to come to the next one and they're going to be better and better. So it is a training. You've got to be a bit of a special person to be able to survive under those kind of circumstances, you know, without sleep, under constant pressure. Imagine translating into Chinese, Arabic, Russian, what is it, French, Spanish, from English at 3 in the morning, knowing that you've got 2.5 hours to do it, you know, and you haven't slept properly for the last couple of weeks, and you know that everything hangs upon it. Requires
that's similar to facilitation. You need to be passionate about what you're doing.
Quite so.
That's very important. I think that's very underlying to all the things. If we have to do it well, you have to be passionate about it. Yes, definitely.
And that passion probably brings us to our last question. Oh wait, no, is there a handbook? Is there a handbook? The answer is yes. Do you want to tell us about the handbook?
Well, there's a
question. Is there a handbook?
This is like having children, you know, they come without handbooks. So the climate change conferences are similar to that. I did try though. There is a book called How to COP. It's how to organize a conference of the parties. It's an ebook actually. We can send you the link and you can see all the details. There is a YouTube video which also tells you how to organize, talks about the process a little bit more if you're interested. We have a book called Climate Change Behind the Scenes, and it's really trying to tell it in photos. I can send all those links to David, and maybe he can share it with the group. They're all public.
Wonderful.
We'll give you a bit more on that. Yeah.
What we'll do is that we're recording this, as David said earlier, and that will go up on the IAF website. And so we'll make sure all those links are there. So if anybody here wants those books, look on the IAF site and the Europe Middle East in a few weeks'
books,
time.
they're public books, they belong to the Climate Change Secretariat, and so they're accessible to
and I think that was initiated, the How to COP was initiated, wasn't it, 2012? I think that was being done when we were in Doha. That was the first version of that.
I just want to make a point there, Martin, about
please do, then we'll wrap up.
The video on the IAF site is in the members only section. So if if anybody wants the references to the book, I don't know if you have the ebook link there, or I don't know.
Send us an email and we will send it back.
If you want the book and you're not a member, you can do one of two things. Join IAF, that's the preferred option. And Celeste, are you still on the call? Yes, you are. Yes, you're still there. But if not, then just put your name in the chat, making it clear that that's what you want. And then David, perhaps you'd pick that up, or I will, or Raina will. Yeah, we'll make sure that you get that. But of course, best thing is to be part of IAF, this global community of practice of top-notch facilitators. And that's what you might want to do. As we close, Salwa, what was the question? The most rewarding moment, I think that was the precise most rewarding aspect or moment of your time, not just in Indabas, but in climate change. Is there something that comes to mind? You've got 4 minutes.
Before I do that, I'll take 1 minute to say something about the Indaba.
Yeah.
I think what the climate change process has proved is that the Indaba can become an international method. Depending on the environment and the facilitation need, I would say we should stick as close to the traditional concept as possible. This is one thing I'd like people who attended this seminar to take away with them. I think that the people are, if you are trying an Indaba with somebody, it needs to be a round table and it needs to be outside. It needs to be in the snow, in the rain, around the fire. It has better energy there. And the more senior the group you're dealing with, the more I think susceptible they will be to an Indaba. As a facilitator, you need to create very much an environment of trust in that group. But at the same time to give everybody a voice, and more importantly, time to express that. We didn't talk much about Walter, but Walter from the Green Culture Lab has researched the Indaba in a very, he looked at it from an anthropological point of view. And I think there's something that maybe we can also share what Walter is doing.
We will. Walter would have been here, but he had a commitment. We invited him to be here.
So basically, I wanted to conclude that the Indaba can be moved into an international concept, but please keep it as close to the traditional as possible.
I'm going to hand back to David to close in a moment. You've got 30 seconds,
to
Salwa,
say what was my
most rewarding moment.
Okay, I don't think it's a rewarding moment, but I think I was privileged to have spent at least 20 years of my life where my mission was to save the world. And I took it seriously. It sounds like a cliche, but I really took it seriously. And that is the one long moment I had.
Wonderful.
That I was really much at the forefront of this.
This has been such a pleasure.
Wonderful people as well, with wonderful people.
Absolutely.
Amazing people working.
You took it seriously. You also did it with a smile, and we've seen that smile and that lightness throughout this conversation. So Salwa, it's been such a pleasure doing this with you. And
thank you, Martin.
Thank you for accepting the invitation to participate in this. And on behalf of everybody, we'd like to thank you fulsomely for your contribution. So I think with that, I'll hand back David just to say the last word and to finish within a minute or two.
Yes.
We've got another one of these in a month, haven't we? And
we have indeed, and I'm going to give you all the information about that right now. So yes, again, Salwa, thank you very much. Martin, thank you very much. I'd like to also thank Reina, who was on the technical backup there.
Oh, Reina, fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Reina.
Saved my life so many times.
Celeste, who helped us also set up this talk. Bogdan for his input regarding the Mentimeter link. Salwa, I just wanted personally to wish you a very happy retirement, and I think it's well deserved for your role in saving the planet. I just want to let everybody know that this talk is available on the members section for the IAF members. You will find this on the members section. These talks are on the first Thursday of every month, and our next talk will be on the 4th of March at 1800 hours Central European time, and there'll be Miriam O'Donoghue from Ireland speaking about mind mapping, a hands-on conversation from skill to applications for facilitators. And there you go. So that's me. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your input. And we really hope to see you again on the 4th. Just to close, we are going to take a photograph, if you don't mind. So if anybody doesn't want their photograph taken,
do that right now.
You can maybe, I don't know, put your screen or, and Reina, I think you're doing the photographer. So can you let us know when you're about to take it and once you have done it?
All right, I'm going to take my glasses off.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'll take two because we're on two screens. I can't take all at once. Actually, now I can. Okay. So if everyone is ready for it,
yes.
So smile all. Thank you.
Cheese.
Yes.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Everyone. Thank you.
We wish you well.
Salwa. Thank you, Martin.
See you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Shall we stay on?